Good evening, ladles and jelly spoons, and welcome to the Shizzle Sticks channel. Now, before we start, I'd like to say that this video is sponsored by my own incompetence, because we'll be using the words veto and v-stol interchangeably throughout the duration of this video. Now, if that disappoints you in any way, please feel free to leave a complaint in the comments below, and I'll proceed to not give a single flying fuck, because it's my presentation and not yours. And on that note, welcome to the Distilled Dangerzone. The show where we turn hard, drink harder, and where every G we pull comes with a T. Get it? Because gin and tonic, puns. Although perhaps ironically I'm drinking a gin and 100% pure pressed apple juice, never from concentrate, 1 litre. Feel like I'm a student again with that combination. But actually surprisingly alright, it is palatable to one's taste buds. Anyway, this episode is called Vertical Bloodlines, a DNA dive into the F-35B. This is the F-35, and while its presence bears the unmistakable swagger of America's united engineering prowess, it is probably more controversial than their current president. But fear not, ladles and jelly spoons, for we ain't about that political life here on the channel. Nay, my degree and profession is in aerospace, not on how to be somehow out of touch with society regardless of what side of the political spectrum you're on. Unless we're talking about this mouldy, expired, wet turd, in which case, fucking let me sock him in the face. Now, while the modern journalist will focus on shit that really doesn't matter, like how a handicapped F-35 couldn't beat the tried and battle-tested F-16 in a dogfight, because apparently the modern sensationalist journalist wants nothing more than to bend over a table to receive John Boyd's flaccid Captain Winky. And while I'm sure we could do an entire dissertation on a journalist's arse after said encounter in the Pentagon, we're not about that life either. Nay, instead we're here to talk about the F-35's arse, which for some of you is probably slightly better, for some of you it might also be a disappointment, but such is life. Specifically that of the F-35B, the version that looked at vertical flight and said, "Aye, fuck it, we ballin'." You see, for the last decade, the F-35B's rear end has seen more debate than unfortunate souls have seen one man, one jar. And yet, I've not really come across anything that actually tries to, and I mean really fucking tries, to get to the bottom of why the F-35 has the backside it does. Most videos belt out Yak-141 like it's some sort of magical Soviet sex wizard that shits out stealth fighters on demand, and then they'll call it a day. Which is just lazy journalism, in my opinion. Anyway, there are 3 common answers floating around on where the F-35 got its swiveling rear engine design from, and I want you, the audience at home, to pick one of them while we go on this little odyssey together. And we're going to go from the most likely candidate, at least on paper, to the least likely, concluding with a revelation that will leave you simultaneously surprised and disgusted by how fucking obvious the truth was all along. The 3 contenders are as follows, and if you were paying attention there, I might have accidentally scrolled forward. But first of all, we have the Yak-141. Now, I think it's pretty fucking obvious why this one gets brought up pretty much all the time. So much as whispering the designation F-35 will get cummy boos clamouring to stick their nose in where it isn't wanted. And then, we have Convair Model 200. An aircraft that never got off the drawing board, and yet for some fucking reason people think it's the Lord and Saviour of supersonic VTOL design. Now I say that, there is a caveat in there, but we'll get to that when we get to it. And finally, none other than the Harrier jump jet, or the Hawker P1127 if we want to get pedantic. An aircraft so far removed from the F-35 system you'd have to be sucking the RAF's dick to think it was a good choice. Now, lock in your answer, brace yourself for squeaky bum time, and the fact you're probably wrong, but also prepare to be disappointed in both yourself and the aerospace community as a whole, or at least be mildly surprised by just how far down the rabbit hole it actually goes. First up, we have the Yak-141. It's not hard to see why this aircraft gets wheeled out on a Zimmer frame as the daddy of the F-35. I mean, every other Redditor, clickbait, self-proclaimed journalist, and shitty AI video or YouTuber recording from under their blankets after parental enforced bedtime while bursting for the toilet, or just anyone with a stick up their arse really seems to relish in the fact that the F-35 allegedly uses a Soviet design. Except I'm here to thrust my hand up their arse and twist said stick sideways. Now the premise for this is pretty solid on paper, to be honest. The Yak-141, or the Yak-41 if we want to get pedantic again, was the first three-bearing swizzle nozzle? Swivel nozzle aircraft to ever fly, and that much is true. And also that non-engine designer Lockheed Martin approached the Soviet Union and bought the blueprints, or at the very least flight data, for the Yak-141's engine nozzle design. Now, just to be absolutely fucking clear, Lockheed did not buy any blueprints or designs, but a lot of people seem to think that for some reason. Anyway, surely by this point you can start to see how this argument begins to fall at the first hurdle. And while it is true that Lockheed Martin obtained limited technical data on the Yak-141, most of the more credible sources seem to agree that this data was neither hugely helpful or pivotal in the F-35's actual VTOL nozzle design, but rather was basically just a glorified de-risking exercise for Lockheed Martin to confirm design choices on how such an engine system could be integrated into an airframe, as opposed to, you know, outright buying the fucking engine design. And to see if such a nozzle design would actually fucking work in the first place, because, again, and I cannot stress this enough, Lockheed Martin do not make fucking engines. Moreover, some sources say that the prototype for the F-35, the X-35, had already been built before the data exchange was even properly completed. So, while the Yak-141 certainly informed the process and probably helped Lockheed sleep slightly better at night, it wasn't the aircraft sugar daddy. At best, it was the weird step-uncle who shows up once a year for Christmas, gifts you a suspiciously lukewarm blanket, and then scuttles off out the door with the last mince pie. Now, upon closer inspection, the Yak-141 has a pronounced kink in the nozzle when not vectored downwards. Now, initially I thought this was due to it being designed with the nozzle in the 90-degree position first and foremost, and straightened out afterwards, but I tried to recreate it in CAD and, well, failed miserably, so I guess the verdict is still out on that. But there is no denying that the exhaust, when straightened out, looks like a drunk man designed it. Perhaps it was me in a past life with more competency when it comes to reverse engineering shit. Regardless, or irregardless if your diet consists of an IV drip, the F-35's F135 nozzle has none of that bendy bollocks and was clearly designed as a straight-through unit first and then adapted to rotate, which in engineering terms is the difference between spraying and praying and actually taking the time to line up a good fucking shot. So, while at first glance the Yak-141 does appear to share a lineage with the F-35, it is simply, and perhaps disappointingly for some, just a case of convergent evolution, and saying that the F-35 copied it is rather like saying that dolphins copied ichthyosaurs. So say it with me, ladles and jelly spoons, one more time. Two things looking the same does not mean that one copied the other. Next up we have the Convair Model 200. Now interestingly, this aircraft also comes with a conventional takeoff landing flavour, which makes me think that somebody on the design team hadn't quite doused themselves in copious amounts of cocaine yet. It also has canards, which as we all know are God's personal gift to the aerospace community. I'd also like to take this moment to put on my smug face in the light that the F-47 looks like it's about to rock some sexy ass looking canards too. Now if you're a long time subscriber of the channel, if you know, you know. Well Jeff, we've come up with a few concepts, but we've made some of them deliberately suck arse by slapping canards on them. So yeah, for those who constantly go on and say, oh, well, canards are bad for stomach because I know absolutely nothing on the subject, but I'm going to talk with confidence like I know something nobody else does, even though I don't. Fuck you. I think that guy probably has some unresolved anger issues. Anyway, the Model 200's design also predates the Yak-141's first flight by well over a decade, with the design appearing around the early 1970s. There was also a one-to-one front fuselage model made for it, as well as a cockpit mock-up. The Wikipedia page also vouches heavily for the Model 200 as the inspiration behind the F-35B's engine design, and even goes as far to say that the engine for it, the JTF-22A-30A, laid the groundwork for the nozzle design on the F-135 PW600. Which I find hilarious because Pratt & Whitney don't make the lift system for that engine. So yeah, if Wikipedia's vouching for it, that's basically the kiss of death at this point. We've officially moved from plausible influence to, please, for the love of God, Derek, shut the fuck up. You got your sources from Meth Man on Reddit again. Model 200 was also shelved in favour of this abomination. Not entirely sure what it is about America and its almost habit of occasionally choosing the most cursed looking prototype when given a choice of two, but here we are. Long story short, instead of getting a slick Model 200, the US opted for a VTOL brick in the form of the XFV-12, an aircraft that, as history dictates, went about as well as its star plane looked. For the slower amongst you on the uptake, that means it went absolutely shit. Some say there's actually a bit of a conspiracy behind this. Now, I haven't went down this rabbit hole just yet, but allegedly, according to at least one source I was looking at, the Navy deliberately chose that design because they thought it was going to fail, because they didn't like the prospect of having to share an aircraft project between different divisions of the military. Now, given what I know about the TFX program after more research than I did on the last video, would not surprise me at this point, but that's a story for a different time. Moreover, Convair was snuffled up by General Dynamics and not Lockheed, and while General Dynamics sold part of their Convair division in 1993 to Lockheed, the Stovall program that led to the VTOL portion of the Joint Strike Fighter program had already started in 1986, meaning if Lockheed had used any official glorious Model 200 inspired design, they'd have to have toddled into the design room a full 7 fucking years late. Though coincidentally, the F-35 would later be built at Fort Worth, which swings and roundabouts, I guess. So with option 2 out the way, we finally have the Harrier. Now look, I will be completely honest with you, I cannot for the life of me work out why people think this aircraft has anything at all to do with the F-35. And if you ask said people, they'll rub their 2 little brain cells together and tell you, well, both planes do vertical takeoff, therefore they must be the same. You might as well tell me a fucking Go-Go Elite Traveller mobility scooter uses the same engine mechanics as a Porsche 911. I mean, at least with the Soviet Sex Wizard, there's a nozzle mechanism that vaguely resembles what the F-35B is doing. But the Harrier uses 4 fucking nozzles. 2 for the exhaust, 2 for the bypass air. It's basically a hot pipey mess that's powered by anti-physics and sheer British audacity. Now, if you want to compare the Harrier to the Boeing X-32, then that's fair game. Have at it. The aircraft looks like it was built by a toddler with a Crayola crayon and a dream. And its VTOL system shares some Harrier DNA, but lumping the Harrier in with the F-35B? That's more of a stretch than fucking Stretch Armstrong. So, time to reveal your answers. Who is the real daddy of the F-35B? Now, after much thought, extensive research, deep engineering it's the Harrier. No, seriously, the F-35's VTOL system starts with the Harrier, or more specifically the P1127. You see, early success of the P1127 in late 1960 led Hawker to start looking into what they called the second generation of VSTOL. They'd already given physics the old 1-2 fuck you with the Kestrel, and they were gonna go back in and finish it off by running back into the ring with a steel chair in the form of the P1150. Because what's worse than a fighter attack plane that can literally take off and land anywhere? A plane that can do all of that and go fucking supersonic, apparently. However, there is a big caveat. The existing Pegasus engine on the Harrier could not produce the thrust required to achieve this. So in order to do this, an entirely new engine design had to be worked out. And so, unbeknownst to 99% of the armchair experts watching this video, one of the most metal as fuck propulsion concepts ever to grace this miserable rock was born. Say hello to plenum chamber burning. Now, you could consider this afterburner, but that implies that the air has already been through the combustion chamber, and as previously detailed, the front 2 nozzles on the Harrier were for the bypass air, not the exhaust. Plenum chamber burning, however, said, fuck it, we're lighting that shit on fire anyway, which means the P1150 would have had 4 literal Dragon Rage infused nozzles belching out fire out of basically every fucking orifice. 1 engine, 4 flamethrowers, probably fuel bill from one of BP's wet dreams too. Would not be surprised. The P1150's scope then expanded to the point when the aircraft couldn't fulfill the specifications and was later redesigned and redesignated the P1154 with a refined specification for high-speed, low-altitude flight and Mach 2 performance at altitude, with the potential for Mach 2.4 performance using some new intakes. And what's worse than supersonic VTOL fighter attack plane? That's right, if you read the title, supersonic VTOL fighter attack plane that can now carry a fucking nuclear weapon. This aircraft was one set of variable geometry wings shy of being a fucking F-111 with VTOL. And I say that because the fucking thing was supposed to have terrain following radar too. Hawker basically asked the Ministry of Defense what they wanted the plane to do, and they basically turned round and said, yes, and promptly walked out the room. And just as a general reminder, we're still in the 1960s at this point. Worse still, as if it couldn't get any worse, the P1154, while the P1154 was on the design table, Hawker Siddeley then discovered some LSD in the storeroom and came in swinging with the P1155, which was basically the exact same thing, but now for some reason it has 4 fucking engines instead of 1, because, and you're not going to believe this, apparently it was cheaper to make. But at the cost of range, speed and altitude setbacks and some glaring safety issues, like, don't want to do a throwback to the F-14 video, but here we are. Like to say, if one engine was to fail while the other one was in full gremlin mode. Unfortunately, because the MOD wanted everything and the aircraft essentially necessitated an entirely new type of engine layout, plus engineering hurdles surrounding the fuselage vibrational problems caused by the exhaust from the 4 nozzles in gremlin mode configuration, meant that the project's costs began to spiral and the project was basically told to get in the bin. So you're probably sitting there thinking, well, that's all fascinating and all, but what the fuck does that have to do with the F-35? And that is an excellent question. My point is, the UK aerospace industry did not just make the Harrier and the Kestrel and give each other a congratulatory wank and call it a day. No, British engineers all over the country basically snorted, injected and consumed every known drug to man and started shitting out these designs like their lives depended on it. It didn't just stop with the P1150, the P1154 and the P1155. You had the P1126, P1132. You want an actual VTOL F-111 derived from the TSR-2? Let's fucking go. Want more versions and evolutions of the Harrier? I mean, here's fucking 4 of them. Want to give the Harrier canards? I mean, sure, why the fuck not at this point? Have the P1226. Fast forward a few years to the 1980s after a bunch of overly complicated mergers happened. Vickers merged with English Electric and Bristol into British Aircraft Corporation, or BAC, who then merged with Hawker Siddeley and Scottish Aviation into British Aerospace. Feels unnecessarily complicated, but such is life. I'd also like to take a moment to appreciate the fact that Scottish Aviation had the balls to use a coat of arms as their logo. The worst type of logo, but they said fuck it, we're going to do it anyway. Anyway, the MOD then came knocking on the door with a fresh batch of nose candy, saying that they actually really do want a shiny new supersonic VTOL capable interceptor, and because British Aerospace had absorbed the likes of Vickers and Hawker Siddeley by this point, they were more than ready, and thus the P1216 was born. Also the P1214, because it wouldn't be British engineering if one of the design teams didn't have a few screws loose. The Soviets and Americans were busy playing checkers with the X-29 and Su-47. Meanwhile, Britain's over here playing fucking 4D chess on about 5 different fucking hallucinogenics. Anyway, the P1216 was aimed to solve some of the fuselage heat and vibrational issues presented with the Harrier-based designs, because believe it or not, you can't have a fuselage to vibrate if there's no fucking fuselage there to vibrate. BAE effectively went back to their roots and dragged out the de Havilland vampire kicking and screaming from its coffin and gave it the 1980s treatment. However, removing the pesky rear fuselage meant that the 2 rear nozzles could be then combined to improve engine efficiency, and how better to achieve that, and I'm sure you can see where this is going, than to use a 3-bearing swivel nozzle. Like the Convair Model 200, the P1216 had many advanced test models made, but unlike the Model 200, the P1216 had a full 1:1 scale mock-up model made of the aircraft. And just to really hammer the point home again, MOD were proper keen on this project, like dog with a bone energy levels of keen. This wasn't just a side project for them, this was their main fucking character. Come hell or high water, Britain was going to get a supersonic VTOL capable fighter jet, whether the world liked it or not. And while all this serious VTOL shit was going on, Rolls-Royce also wanted a piece of the action, because why the fuck not at this point? They even made a whole fucking booklet on all the shit they were working on. And not only can you find stuff on the suspiciously Convair Model 200-esque aircraft from General Dynamics in there, further confirming that Lockheed probably didn't have the Model 200 information, but right on the cover is a misleading placeholder for the P1216. Pages 24 and 67, big juicy engine diagrams meant for that very aircraft, but conveniently unnamed because, well, you know, P1216 is supposed to be top secret at this point. But it doesn't stop there, because Rolls-Royce has basically been riding the VTOL dick since the 1960s, and have basically been blue-balled by the Ministry of Defense for the last 2 fucking decades at this point, for a supersonic VTOL aircraft. So, naturally, Rolls-Royce has been pretty fucking busy. And by busy, I mean they've gone absolutely fucking ham on the US Patent Office. I'm talking April 1960 patent for jet pipe arrangements, February 1969, nice, patent for cooling system on 3-bearing swivel nozzle, and July 1987 vectoral exhaust nozzle for gas turbine engine. Rolls-Royce, both metaphorically and if their patent images are anything to go by, literally made Lockheed receive its limp penis. And that's before we get into the fact that they made mock-ups of these engines and a functional 3-bearing, demonstrating the fact that the 1987 patent blatantly depicts the P1216's engine layout. And in return for all of this hard work, Rolls-Royce were rewarded with a succulent F-35 meal. Because when you finally look up who actually makes the F135's lift system, surprise, it is not Pratt & Whitney, but none other than Rolls-Royce. Worse still, BAE Systems, the designers of the P1216, make 15% of the components on the F-35 program as a whole, and if that wasn't enough, the final smoking gun on the matter is this collection of statements on BAE's website, and I quote, "Our expertise in the VTOL technology developed from our Harrier program earned us our place on the F-35, and today we hold lead design authority on crucial aspects, crucial capabilities including fuel, crew escape, and life support systems." Unquote. Not only that, but BAE posted a statement on the 23rd of November 2009 detailing how they were involved in the quote program of flights that will see the aircraft begin steeper and slower descents before achieving the first true vertical landing by the F-35, unquote. The statement also then goes on to say, quote, "The move to Patuxent, I think that's how you pronounce it, River follows a series of successful hover pit trials conducted at Lockheed Martin's Fort Worth plant, which demonstrated the STOVL capability of the aircraft. During these trials, BF-1 was anchored on top of BAE Systems' designed metal grid about 15 feet off the floor of the pit, enabling the aircraft to simulate free air flight. Moreover, BAE were involved with not only the Joint Strike Fighter program, but also the JAST and the STOVL and CARF programs prior to that. Ladles and jelly spoons, the answer has been staring down at you this whole fucking time, and you never once stopped to acknowledge it. They made the jump jets, and now they help make the F-35s, which in perhaps one of aviation's most bizarre plot twists through Rolls-Royce and BAE's P1216, kind of makes the Harrier the convoluted granddaddy of F-35B. Now, at the beginning of this presentation I said that the F-35B represented the unmistakable swagger of America's united engineering prowess. I lied. F-35 represents what could be achieved when we collectively put our heads together to make one of the most advanced aircraft the entire world has ever seen. That, and never underestimate British engineering, because we're always watching. And on that note, ladles and jelly spoons, goodbye, and thanks for watching. Now I've got to find the stop button, but while I do that, I'm going to put up this nice animation of what the P1216's engine nozzle mechanism would have probably looked like. Where is stop button? Right, I found it. Hope you all have a great weekend, or week, or whenever the fuck you're watching this video. Goodbye again, and thanks for watching again.